Hi guys, it's Cindy from Part-Time Permies, and today we're going to talk about our meat bird experiment. We actually ordered Freedom Rangers and Cornish Cross this year. We've raised both and processed both in the past, but never side to side. So these birds are now 8 weeks old, and what we're going to do is just kind of run down a comparison of how healthy they are, how well they fared, how easy they are to take care of in comparison of these two crossbreeds. These are both meat breeds that are actually crosses of other breeds. Cornish Cross is fairly well known on the cross. I believe they are Cornish Cross with Plymouth Rocks. Those are your typical birds that are currently used in your meat chicken growing and processing facilities. The other breed we have are the Freedom Rangers, and these are often used more for the pastured chickens that you might get. They grow a little slower, so they're not as efficient in feed, but they tend to be a little hardier breed, or at least that's so they say. We put them on pasture as early as possible. In the past, we've waited until they're like 4 or 5 weeks old and then put them on pasture. But this year, we initially ordered 25 of each type from our local hatchery up at Town Line Farms. They were sent to us overnighted, so we got them one day. They were a day old, put them on pasture from day one. We had them all in the same coop from day one, but we actually received 26 of each because they like to send an extra. We had also ordered 5 black Australorp. They gave us 6, but those birds are layer birds. They will not be butchered at the same time as these meat birds here. Many people order at the beginning of spring to harvest in the summer. We ordered in July on purpose. One, it's warmer when the chicks get to us, and I wasn't as worried about putting them on pasture from day one. We would have no freezing temperatures at night. We were pretty much in the 70s or 80s during the day. Interesting thing is, in July, these birds will get out from under those heaters for pretty extended periods of time to go forage on pasture. So the other reason why we order in July is so that we can process our birds at the end of September, early October, in that time frame. We are actually going to host an in-person workshop for that processing day. If you're interested in coming on property and learning how to process your own chickens, we do have limited openings for that workshop on September 24th, 2023. So if interested, I will put the link in the pinned comment below. You can check more information out if you click on that link. But our biggest advantage with the end of September or early October processing day is that it's cooler. You need less ice. You do still need to chill your birds. If we wait until it's a little bit cooler to process our birds, and as well as any animals you process, you actually have less issue with flies getting everywhere. Double benefits to ordering our chickens in the middle of the summer so that we can process in the beginning of fall. We're now in week 8, but just to kind of give a comparison on how these birds have grown. In the first few weeks, I would say they're pretty equivalent in raising them. They are both pretty spry when they're little. They're running around. They can shift around pretty easily with your mobile coops. We keep them in pretty small coops in the beginning, in the first few weeks, and then we shifted them into a larger coop at week 4. In that larger coop, we kept them with heat for 1 more week, and then we split the birds into 2 larger coops, this one behind me being one of them. We have the Cornish Cross in another coop, both being mobile coops. And again, if you want another video on the comparison of these 2 coops and which one we like better, let me know in the comments below for that. But once we had shifted them into the coops and weaned them off heat, week 5, they were moving around independently, once a day shifts, and eventually a couple of weeks later, twice a day shifts for the smaller of our tractors, still on once a day shifts for these guys. The one thing you want to do with meat birds at the beginning, the first few weeks, whichever breed you get, any fast growing meat birds, you do want to put them on a vitamin and electrolyte supplement that you put in their water so that they don't have any weakness issues, vitamin deficiencies as they're growing so quickly. We did that for the first 4 weeks or so. Previous years without supplement, we had lost birds. Up till about 4 weeks, we had 0 losses in transport or in raising our young birds. Once we moved them into the larger coop, you do have to watch the size variability. We started seeing size variability with both breeds starting around 3 to 4 weeks. We did see more variability in the Cornish Cross than we did in the Freedom Rangers. The bigger birds were bigger than the Freedom Rangers. The smaller birds, the runts, were smaller than the Freedom Rangers. But we actually had more runts in our Cornish Cross group than we did in our Freedom Ranger group. Now of note, we did not buy sexed birds. If you want more consistent size, you may want to buy the male birds because they will tend to be bigger. I have had runts be males as well as our largest birds sometimes are females. Non-sex, you may have more variation though. That is something to keep in mind, but both groups here are non-sex, and we definitely have more variation within our Cornish Cross than we do with our Freedom Rangers. Now that did get to be a little bit of an issue when we moved them to the bigger coop. They were in this coop when we first moved them out of their little tractors. And this coop, you have to block every single gap along the bottom, especially when they're only about 4 or 5 weeks old. Our smallest birds were very adept at sneaking out, but I want to say we had 5 runts in the Cornish Cross and 2 in our Freedom Rangers, and they kept finding ways out of that coop. So I think we did lose 1 Cornish Cross that never came back when it escaped. So that was our first loss, and that was just because we didn't have all the gaps filled. You got to be careful with that. So another issue we have is we move these coops once or twice a day, and our Cornish Cross and Freedom Rangers, one thing we notice is that the Freedom Rangers are much more agile. They get out of the way faster, they move with you faster. The Cornish Cross, especially as they get bigger and bigger, but just in general, tend to get in the wrong places, okay? So we actually lost 2 more runts. The big ones we have trouble just trying not to run over their feet and not injure them that way. We have not had injuries that way, but 2 of our runts in the Cornish Cross group have been lost due to unfortunate accidents during move where they did get caught in a bad place. That we have not had issues here with our Freedom Rangers. In fact, I would say that's actually pretty amazing because this coop is harder to move and harder to control the lift and decline as you're moving it. So I would expect more birds to potentially get caught in bad places as I move this coop, but that's not what we found. It was actually our other coop, which I find easier to move, but the Cornish Cross, either they're not as smart or not as agile or both. They tend to just get in bad places at times, and yeah, it's definitely very unfortunate. I definitely have to be a lot more careful with the Cornish Cross as I move the coop. Even with that precaution, we still had a couple accidents. If you're putting them on pasture, moving them every day, you want a bird that's not going to get trapped. You want a bird that can keep up with your move, because if you're losing birds through the process of moving them on pasture, then you're not going to have as much meat in the end, or you're going to have to buy more chicks in the beginning. It's just, you know, wasting feed on those extra birds that you lose along the way. If you're interested in a side-by-side comparison of the meat on its own video and taste tests, let me know in the comments below and we can get that put together for you down in the future as well. One other thing I would notice, both birds poop a lot, but the Cornish just seem to get so dirty and so poopy. That's another reason why we move those guys twice a day, is so that they're not sitting their own poop. The Freedom Rangers are just kind of starting to move into the level of poopiness that the Cornish have been in for the last few weeks. So they're a little less messy, and again, being up and active, they're less likely to lay in their own poop, as the Cornish seem to always do. But general conclusion so far, 8 weeks out, is that just general health, activity level, ease of raising the birds, I do tend to favor the Freedom Rangers for those reasons. For a small homestead pastured bird, the Cornish are just a little bit harder to take care of, tend to have a little more health issues. Yes, they grow faster. So there's pluses and benefits to both these birds. I think for the win, I would suggest the Freedom Rangers for ease of raising on pasture. If you're interested in just some how-to on processing, we do have a video, an older video on processing your own meat birds. I will link that here at the end. We'll see you with our next video. Thanks.